sexy people of the internet. It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Nashville Metalcore, Agitators, Chamber. The band's new album. I said that really Scottish, eh?
That chamber.
Sorry.
Harry Potter would be different with you. Like, this is the chamber of secrets. Run, Harry. What are we doing here?
The band's new album, I Love to Kill For, will be released on July 14th on Pure Noise Records. This is album number 2 from Chamber, which follows up their 2020 release, Cost of Sacrifice. It's an album about people getting lost or mired in bullshit, whether that's addiction or narcissism or selfishness, says guitarist Gabe Manuel about the upcoming album. There are all sorts of ways the people you love can fail you in search of themselves, and ways people don't come back from that. The album was produced, mixed and mastered by Mr. Randy LaBeouf.
LaBeouf. He is bringing Le Beef.
Yes, indeed. So we've kind of had a little taste of Chamber already this year. We played one of the tracks on the podcast, and then the Chamber vocalist, Jacob Lilly, he guested on a little track called Chain, which was on one of the new albums from the Acacia Strain, Step Into the Light, which we reviewed, and it was savage as fuck. Which kind of sets up this album nicely. Because if you were hoping for those levels of intensity, then you've come to the right place. Duncan, what did you make of the new release from Chamber? Or Chamber?
Chamber. So the first time listen for me, out with the fact that I'd completely forgotten that we had been introduced to one of their tracks before, and clearly didn't listen to anything you said in our review of Acacia Strain. Chamber were brand new to me. Also don't read the press, which makes me sound unprepared and unprofessional. But you know what I did, Dave? I listened to the music. And that's all that counts. That's what the band appreciates.
Yeah.
Like what someone else has written about them, or where the singer's been. They just want right from the hip Duncan's initial thoughts. First thing to say is this is heavy as fuck, savage as fuck, but above all else, a really interesting listen. Like, this has got loads going on in the best possible way. At its core, it's kind of grounded in kind of metalcore in a lot of respects, but it has these flurries that just, like, specifically in the guitar work, the guitarists are masters of, oh, you like this riff? Well, listen to this super technical bit that you will get like a stab of half a second of, and then we'll come back to it. And they kick them off in the weirdest places. Like, some of them are conventionally like at the end of a riff, just before going back in. But other times they come at like such a left field that you kind of, if you're sitting at like a bus stop and you're listening to this, someone would think you're being attacked by an imaginary bee, because you're like, oh, you're fucking, like, you know what I mean? You do. They just come in from different angles. There's loads going on. At times, and I mean this as a pure compliment to the band, even if they don't take it as a compliment, you always got to, like, when you suggest bands, we found out this recently with the St. Pierre fucking Snake experience, or experiment. I was like, oh yeah, totally Nine Inch Nails, and then the guy come back and was like, actually, I don't like Nine Inch Nails, and I was like, thanks very much, good to know. Sounds a lot like it. At its core, at times here, specifically when it's doing like stuff in the kind of pocket groove with the guitars and the bass drums, it reminded me a lot of Chimaira. Did you have that?
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Fucking it, like this. Exactly once again, the same thing. We're old as fuck, so we remember like we remember first two album Chimaira. I've been listening to The Impossibility of Reason quite a bit recently since they did that kind of Reformation gig thing, and I caught a couple of clips and I got all misty-eyed and nostalgic for the year 2002. I was like, oh, I need to go back. It reminded me of that. It has what they had, which I think was one of the best elements that made them stand out at the time, was you got all that stuff that all the other new wave of American heavy metal bands were doing, but when it came to just like bringing it down to a groove, like for a verse riff, I don't think there was many bands did it as well as Chimaira, and this album has it ripping out everywhere. But other sides here, you have got bits that are kind of almost quasi-reminiscent of Every Time I Die. There's elements in here that are a little bit Dillinger-esque. There's bits that feel a little bit like kind of modern-day Code Orange. And then vocally, you just have the most savage fucking tone like ever. Also, they have 2 guest appearances on this album, which just made me wonder, are frontmen just called Matt now?
Yes.
It's a lot of and I'm not just taking shots here because the 2 guest appearances are by 2 frontmen, both named Matt. But I think the last couple of albums we've listened to where there's been a guest appearance for a vocalist, they've also been called Matt. I really wonder if that's just a thing just now. I don't know.
Could be.
I don't know. Easy to remember. Yeah, the beauty of this album is how much it shifts up. It's unrepentantly heavy, right? Like really, 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 really heavy. And that pretty much after Chamber, the opening track, I was like, oh right, this is get my fucking uncompromising savage sheet over me. Let's huddle in and take this in. And then they threw a massive curveball on Retribution, which has these moments of almost kind of bleak, a band we're going to be talking about later on, Will Haven-esque sort of dark melody, specifically on the guitar work, which lift things in a really sinister way. It's interesting because Acacia Strain used that a lot as well. So it's kind of almost like a little influence that's kind of permeated its way through. And once you get through Retribution, at that point, it really is kind of like a, what are we going to get, where are we going to get it? And the band never really stopped you guessing, which might to some people sound like a frustrating listen. I fucking loved it, because when I went back subsequently on my 3rd and 4th listens in particular, I was starting to pick out small bits the guitar was doing, which were almost nods to other bits that were happening in other songs, or a groove that reminded me of something somewhere else. And then they also have the balls to really keep the tracks not only short, but they will cut shorter. There's 2 tracks in the middle of this one, We Followed You to the Bitter and Our Beauty Decayed, Nothing Was Left, which are basically those lyrics played over discordant fucking nasty snarly noise. And it's, some cynical people might be out there going like that, well, that's a waste of 2 tracks, just do a song. I disagree. I think by the track that precedes We Followed You to the Bitter is One Final Sacrifice, which is a very, very, very dark song. And I kind of felt like when it was coming towards the end, I was like, oh, need to take a breath. And then you get these 2 very kind of laser focused sharp stabs of just expunging everything, just like a feel that you're just getting everything out. And then you go into Devoured, which is a track which just hits you with all the intensity, ferocity, jaggy, stabby, and then just powers on right through. The album never really lets up. And I even more so when you come to the end. I thought Hopeless Portrait, when I read it as a song title and clocked it as being about just over a minute long, I was like, all right, so this is the quiet outro that the album has been begging for. Maybe the most savage thing on the fucking album. When it's almost like skinning your toe and dipping it in fucking lemon juice. And you just wince all the way through. It's a painful sounding track.
Yeah.
But it's really, 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 really well done. And that's the key to Chamber's success on this release, I think, is that it is mercifully short, because I was even imagining throwing in a couple of tracks in here. I think it might just tip into the, right, I need to split this into 2 listens because of how just blisteringly savage. Your ears will get blisters listening to this. It's that fucking savage. But the second thing is the mix-ups. The placement of the tracks flow in such a way where you're never really left with one idea for too long, although they revisit all those ideas and those styles later on. It's really, really, really well done. It's very well crafted. And it's something that, once again, I think sometimes bands forget about. They take their 12 best songs and they shove them on an album without necessarily thinking about how does it flow, what the order should be. And it's perfectly done here. musically, there's nothing that I can really see which does justice to how great the musicianship is on here. Drums are incredible. Guitar work is jaw-dropping. And that's guitar work, like laying them up, is fucking absolutely nuts. And vocally, it's in the zone. This dude has an incredible, savage, like a good old-fashioned metalcore tone. You know, like all that fucking power and kind of influence of hardcore mixed with the savagery of metal, and it just works so well. The production is what makes the whole thing shine. The production is sharp. It's like standing on a nail. It's that sharp. You know, you have to go for a tetanus shot after listening to this. It has all that stuff like just lined up perfectly. I was in awe of this. I think I spun this like 5 times because of its length, which helped. But like 5 times, 3 times back to back as well, because I just felt like I wanted to go back and I wanted to hear that cool riff again that was on track 3, or you know that bit where everything broke down on track 5. You know, I was actively listening out for those parts again, and it's like a highlight really, really, really cool moments. So I'm new to the chamber party, but I think they're fucking great. I'm glad that I wasn't. I thought when I mentioned Chimaira earlier on, you were going to shout at me. So
No.
I did. It just reminded me of early Chimaira and parts.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
What about you?
That's. I kind of knew because I'd heard obviously a couple of the singles, so I had a rough idea. But yeah, the album itself does not fuck around. It's like Chamber woke up and chose violence for this one. Like it is just from start to finish. It's like 14 tracks. Clocks in just under half an hour.
Chamber woke up, picked up his baseball bat before it got his shower and his wee a bit. Like, I fucking need this today.
And the funny thing is, as you said, there's only like a handful of tracks that are actually single length.
Yeah.
The rest are just like these condensed blasts of like discordant brutality that last anywhere from like 13 seconds to a couple of minutes. When I looked at the track list and I was like, and I saw like there was so many short tracks, I wasn't sure how that was going to go, because we have reviewed releases recently that had a kind of similar blueprint with a similar kind of style, and I felt like some of the shorter tracks on those albums maybe really didn't have enough substance, or
they take
maybe
the air
didn't seem
out. Like any momentum the albums made, those tracks on those albums felt like, oh right, we're restarting.
They didn't link anything together as well. Yeah, for the most part, I didn't have that same issue with the Chamber album. Even the tracks that are a minute long felt like they have purpose. They still gave me like enough that I got everything I wanted from it. I never felt like shortchanged or anything like that with them. The tracks just keep the momentum going. To be honest, there's no kind of messing about. There's zero excess fat on these tracks. Like it's one lean motherfucker of an album. Just like myself, but
you're not an album, you're a person.
Yes, if I was an album, I'd be this Chamber album. What I really enjoyed, even more than like the crushing hardcore grooves and that dissonant metalcore, you know, the breakdowns and the little mathy moments, I enjoyed those little moments of space, like that little, when they blend in, that little kind of cleaner melodic guitar piece. And as you said, you first get that hit on Retribution where they go into that kind of that clean sound where it's like a kind of like, it reminded me of something like that maybe Loathe would do, but it's a bit kind of eerier than Loathe would.
Well, they don't have like the Loathe / Deftones synth in the background.
That's right.
So it's missing that. I think it comes to more prominence on when Deliverance comes. Yeah. Where you get like a whole section of it in the middle and you hear that. And once again, not that steal anything that you might possibly be about to say. I hear that and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be great if they did more of that? But actually, I kind of think that because of the length of the album, it's actually used probably in the right places on the right tracks.
Yeah, I think it is used in the right places. I wouldn't disagree with them if they wanted to like add a wee bit more. I would be quite happy with that.
They can do it really well, which is the kind of frustrating but also joyous thing about it.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I liked when they did bring that in, they kind of went rhythmically more kind of straight down the line as well. It wasn't chaos. There was a lot of kind of nice kind of straight rhythms. They do it again on the following track, At My Hands, and it just gives you these kind of like moments on the album where it isn't quite as chaotic, and you do get a kind of little kind of gap to take a breath. But I liked it. It wasn't too on the nose either. Like it didn't feel wedged in. It was very naturally done and not too like overpronounced. It wasn't like, oh, here's the big predictable clean section. It was subtle and it was well placed. So I like that.
Which, if we're talking about Chimaira, they were very guilty of.
Yes, absolutely.
Like you knew when the chorus was coming in, you knew what the synth guy was about to do, and you knew there was melody coming. And they don't fall into that at all.
No, they don't. But that track, Retribution, that was the first moment I was like, what the fuck? Was that Chimaira I just heard? And I was like,
the main riff.
What's going on?
The main verse riff is
the rhythm and everything is just very...
Once again, I'm not complaining. They've been fucking away for a while, and I those first two albums, maybe everything after that was a bit dodgy, but those first two albums were fucking great.
I also think like this is a much more varied album from Chamber. I went back and kind of just reacquainted myself with Cost of Sacrifice. It's a cool album. This just fucks like so much harder on every level though. I feel like the ideas that they were trying on Cost of Sacrifice have been fleshed out more on this, even though like the tracks are quite short. But there's the variance in the tempo and the rhythm is far more kind of unpredictable, and so is the songwriting, which makes it far more kind of intriguing to listen to. I felt like with the last album, I was like I could kind of predict where certain things were going to go, but in this one, I was like I'm not quite sure what's going to happen next. It was like there's a moment on Tremble where it's kind of like it's teasing and it's building to something heavier, but they don't give you that climax as quickly as they would have maybe previously. They make you wait that little bit longer before like fucking caving your head in, and I also got a bit of that kind of Code Orange-esque kind of feel on that track as well. The way they would often build sections before the kind of payoff. I think they've come on leaps and bounds actually since that last album. This feels more like clinically precise. They've tightened up a lot of their sound, so like the impact is really explosive on this. It feels like there's a lot more attention to detail, from the arrangements to even just the kind of core riffs, to the stuff that sits beneath the surface, and the little kind of rhythmical patterns between the drums and guitars, even down to the detail in the production. For me, all of those kind of elements have just kind of kicked up a notch in this release, and vocally, I think Jacob sounds like
he's fucking great, yeah.
Like just scorched earth. His vocals are just ridiculous. He's kind of perfected that tone where you can just feel every single scream that comes out of him, and then when you add in all the kind of different ranges of screams, plus you've got the guest vocals from the two Matts. It's really just like this array of different kind of vocal tones and styles, which is really cool. Other thing I want to mention though, the bass on this, right? Need to mention this because the guy's called Christian Smith. He is a sexy bastard on the bass. Like, what I would say is, like, when you're listening to this album, you're going to be like in awe of all the chaos and all the fucking technical rhythms. But when you're listening to it, try not to totally focus on that. Instead, every now and again, just have a listen to the bass, because he's adding in some really clever bass parts on this album. It tends to be the moments where the guitars maybe pull back a little bit, which is smart because it kind of creates that gap for the bass to come through. And he really works that bass. Like the tracks like Tremble, To Die in the Grip of Poison, Mirror, and probably my favourite track, the title track. His bass work is awesome. It reminded me a little bit, not that these bands are in similar styles, but it reminded me of Glassjaw a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially on the title tracks, just the way he's kind of walking all over the fretboard. I thought it was really cool. And it's quite subtle as well. It's not like in your face, but if you sit and just listen to the bass, you'll pick it up. It's really cool. Another kind of layer to the sound. I thought, as I said, I really liked the title track. I felt that was one of the kind of standouts where they push a little bit more of that like expansive side in the guitar work, open it up a bit more with atmosphere, kind of that sitting in the background. But I also love the fact that they didn't end the album on that, which I think could have been the predictable thing to do. It sounds like a typical like album closer, where they are pushing a little bit more experimentation, but instead they hit you with that like 1 minute 8 seconds fucking explosion of riffs and blast beats and grooves on Hopeless Portrait. And it's like you couldn't have a more blazing end to the album. When it finishes, you're just like, well, I'm just going to fucking play that again as soon as it ends, because it's a really fun release. It's an album that goes hard from the first second, and it just smashes your eardrums for its entirety. Yeah, I mean, it's not anything I haven't heard done before or even this year. But, we've spoken about bands like Sleep Sculptor or Soulkeeper that have, recently we've just reviewed some of those albums, and they're doing kind of similar things, but there's no denying that Chamber have delivered a really well executed version of that. And I think this might go even harder than those releases, to be honest. It's absolutely fucking punishing. I agree with you. I think the production is fire. I think the guitars are just grotesque sounding at times, and like in the best possible way. Just really full and great crunch, but it's quite ugly, but it's moreish at the same time. Same with the drums, really crisp and punchy. Bass as well, the way they've captured that is fantastic. You can hear all those little runs underneath everything. The vocals, I love vocal tones and I love his performance. My only slight gripe was they tend to use a vocal effect on some of the vocal parts, and it makes it sound quite, kind of grainy and stuff. I felt like it was maybe slightly overused, if I had anything to say, but that aside, this it still fucks, to be honest. So, what we're thinking score-wise for A Love to Kill For by Chamber? What are you thinking?
I mean, this is as intense as a danger wank at your mother-in-law's. You know what I mean? You just got to get it out. I need to get it out. And she's coming up the stairs. Unless this is a Pornhub video, and then it's like, let's slow it down, and hopefully she joins in. No, this is a 4.5. I've never heard of them before. There's so much in here that's just to my particular taste. I love bands nowadays that are doing the kind of, it's not Dillinger, but it's Dillinger. They're doing the Dillinger thing, but it's not just a carbon copy. But they're taking the best elements and infusing it with what they do. Some of the guitar work on this is like some of the most innovative stuff I've heard this year. I'd like generally all like off the wall, really, really well placed. And the album flows spectacularly. And it's a nice, sharp. This is an easy recommend album, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Because you're not asking someone to commit like an hour of their life. Like they could listen to it twice in that time. So yeah, 4.5 for me.
Nice. I think I'm 4 out of 5 on this one for me. I think it's savage, like it's utterly savage. And if you're looking for an album that is going to throw you about like an empty tracksuit, then A Love to Kill For is it. It's like, yeah, as I said, I don't think it's anything that's maybe reinventing the wheel or pushing boundaries, but it's utterly monstrous in sound and production, and it's delivered with intent. And let's face it, that's what we kind of want from an album like this. I think like this is going to incite violence at live shows.
Oh god,
to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
this is going to be absolutely fucking anarchic.
Yeah. So it's a 4 from me. So this album drops on July 14th on Pure Noise Records. Links below to the band and the pre-order. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.